Okay, everybody, here's another training video. And in this one, we're going to be talking about the basics and how to write a proper incident report in OneRisk. This really will apply to both summer and winter operations as it's the same system and essentially we use it the same way. So we've been reviewing reports for 6-7 months now and seeing some common issues. Also, the reports are coming back to me from area management and risk management with a lot of questions and a lot of things been missing in the past. And so I want to kind of try to go through a report and give you some ideas about best practice. Also, with the updates to OneRisk that we've made, we will no longer use a shared patrol@berkshireeast.com account in OneRisk to build and write reports. It's very important that each individual patroller has their own login, and that way you can grab a report, complete a report, sign a report, and submit a report, and we know exactly who was involved in the report. So that's a big change. The patrol generic account has been essentially disabled for this purpose, so that we can move everybody to their login. If you have questions about that, just see me. So just to review, if you haven't already seen this, but to the degree possible, we will start the call from the summit at the time of dispatch. So in this case, I created a test call, a fake call for a person who had an unloading accident at the top of Chair 1. And so we sent a couple patrollers over to the top of Chair 1 where they confirmed injury with the patient. And they transported down off the mountain, and the summit has created this incident, put, I think, myself and Ed Relicki on the incident. And so there's a bunch of data in here, which you can see on the other video that talks just about the dispatching. But I'm going to go ahead and close this dispatch because we've arrived at the first aid room. So Ed and I went over to the top of Chair 1 for somebody who had an unloading accident and has a knee injury. So we'll go ahead and close that. And then now I'm at the base of the hill, and I'm going to log into OneRisk. So we use the Chromebooks, or the desktop there is fine as well. Log in as yourself. And for most of you, when you log in, all you're really going to have probably is the red bar, the incident tracking. You won't have these other modules in your individual accounts. So I'm going to go ahead and click on incident tracking. And this should be pretty familiar to everybody. And here's a list of the current calls in the system. And depending on your level of access, you may or may not see all the calls, because when they are complete, they should disappear from most users' view. In the past, when you wanted to create a new incident, you'd hit the Create New Incident button. That still is an option, but it is not the best option. If we started the call at the top, you will see at this top row here, here's that call I just told you about. Was today on June 28th. You'll notice it has a dispatch number, which normally was empty, and that's because we started it with the dispatch module. It was added, and it's at the top of Chair 1, and its status is New Incident. So rather than create a new incident, you'll actually go in and grab the one that was already started. Okay, so a couple of orientation things to OneRisk. Probably the most important thing is that this cloud with an arrow in the upper left corner, this orange cloud with an arrow, is a save button. And why do we have a save button in a cloud or internet-based system? Well, the answer is that this system is designed in a way that if you lost the internet, if the internet was down, you actually could write reports and it would save the data locally. And so because of that, even though you're working on a web-based system, you do need to, from time to time, and I would encourage it pretty frequently, to go up in this upper left corner, hit the cloud with the arrow, and that is saving the report to the cloud. I think last winter there were some instances where folks started a report maybe at first aid and then wanted to finish it at the summit, and it wasn't there, and the cause was not hitting this cloud button. So going across the top bar here, there's some functionality that really shouldn't probably affect you too much, but there's a way to attach images into this call, There's a way to attach forms, which I'll talk about later. I have the delete button, which you probably don't have, and that just has to do with admin rights. This is a refresh button. This is a way to email somebody about the call. And then these two reports essentially produce a version of the report that we could give to EMS. So I haven't completed this report, but if you had somebody who was in first aid and you had enough time to give some basic information to EMS, this is the way to do it. And we have set up all of the Chromebooks to print to the first aid printer. So if you needed to print a small report for EMS, you could do that. Of course, the detail report is similar, but it's longer. Obviously, as the name suggests, has a lot of information in there. And this is probably almost a better report to give EMS. It's got vital signs. It's got all kinds of stuff in there. So there's a couple of reports that can be produced as well. The check mark is extremely important. This is a button that if you hit it, it's going to tell you all of the required fields that are missing in the report. And so it's a nice one to kind of work through and double check your work and make sure you're not missing any fields. And then submit for review will be the last button you hit. So running through the fields, I'm going to click the incident tab now, and it opens up that area. You'll notice who added the report, which in my case, I added the report for myself, but most of the time you're going to see patrol dispatch added the report. It's going to pull in the incident time that report was started at the summit in the dispatch module. So you don't have to worry about that. And we really do want to have essentially the time that it was called into patrol as the start time for the incident. Activity, anything in red is required, and you can kind of follow along with that. Activity, you're just going to go in and put in the activity. In this case, we'll say that the person was skiing. If they had a collision, you want to go ahead and indicate that. If there was no collision, please put none or fall only. So in this case, no collision involved, but if there was a collision, we do want that field. And then for red flag incidents are going to be two flavors. Anything that is serious enough to generate a accident or incident investigation, which you can take a look at that list, or in any employee incident also. Any incident, no matter how minor, if it involves an employee, go ahead and select red flag, but I won't do that in this case. Okay, so premise, where did this occur? Again, this is pulled over from the call that we started at the summit, but in this case, it was chair 1. And then under location notes, the dispatcher wrote, it's at the top of chair 1. You'll notice that pulled over as well. And that's pretty straightforward. Again, this would be a good time to save as you're working through your tabs. Just takes a second and it's going to save it to the cloud so that you don't lose any of your data. Pennant is kind of interesting because these locations are pre-built as being essentially all at first aid, but they can be moved. So you can actually move the pin to the top of chair 1 and give it a better location. And that's not the worst thing in the world to do. Again, I would save that anytime you're making a big change like that. Go ahead and save it as well. Okay, injured person, pretty straightforward. We do need their first name. We do need their last name. If you know it, we need the gender. It already came in as female from the dispatch. We do not care about ethnicity, and we're contemplating turning that field off anyway. And then just to go through the height and weight, it's a little confusing. So the first height is in feet. The second height is in inches. So in this case, this patient was 5'6", and she weighs 120 pounds. We do have the age 15 inserted from the dispatch side, but let's say in this case, we actually got there and she wasn't 15. She is 10 years old. We do need date of birth. It's critically important. If you can get the patient's date of birth, that is very, very important. The next couple fields are employee related. And this was not an employee. In this case, we would say, yes, it was an employee, but no, they weren't on the clock. So you really don't have to worry about employee on the clock. And do they have insurance is a nice field to know as well. In this case, we'll say yes. Continuing on with the demographics for the patient, we'll just throw in an address, for her. And she's in the USA. Under state and province, you'll notice that we've got these sorted for our most frequent ones at the top. And so we'll just say she's from Anytown, Massachusetts, and the zip is 01001. And the home phone is 413-555-1212. So we put that in. In this case, being a minor, it would be really nice to have, and I know I put John Doe in for a female, sorry about that, but we'll just say that Sarah Doe is her mom, and you can just throw a comment in there about that. So we have a contact. And then occupation, kind of a funny question, but very important for insurance reasons. And the reason we like to know this is if the patient's a litigator, plaintiff's attorney, physician, dentist, any of these kind of high profile professions, it's kind of nice to have that information. If the patient was part of a group, if they were part of, Holloman School or Eagle Brook School or, some Explorer program, whatever the name of the group is, you can just add that right in here. And it is very helpful for us to backtrack a lot of data about the patient. Ticket number, generally, we're not going to have that, but it is nice to know the ticket type. So, in this case, maybe she was here with a group pass or a day pass. And don't worry about how they purchased it. We like to know whether they are wearing corrective lenses or not, and do they have them? Do they need them? And were they wearing them at the time? And then make sure you record that. Under guest notes, it's really you could just add something else in here that doesn't fit anywhere else, but this is not where chief complaint goes, and this is not where your exam or treatment goes. So let's keep that in mind. The patient's chief complaint goes somewhere else, and your treatment goes somewhere else. And their complaints and all that kind of stuff, and first aid and their medical history all goes somewhere else. So that does not have to be filled out. Use the correct fields. It is nice to know the condition that you found the guest. So it could be as simple as sitting on the ground near the offloading ramp. However you found the patient is a pretty key piece of information from a legal and risk standpoint. I would say put how the patient appears to you as you approach the scene. So they were laying on their left side, they were face down on the side of the trail, they were wrapped around a tree, whatever the first appearance is, that sort of 10 feet away appearance of the patient, put that there. So again, that's not your, this is not your exam, this is not your medical treatment, this is not their chief complaint, this is just a visual as you approach the scene. If there are any known videos or photos, you can indicate that, and obviously we want to get those as well. And then again, I would hit save so that I'm capturing all this data and make sure I'm not losing it as I work on the incident. So then we'll go down to injured history. And really, what we're really after mostly here is kind of their skiing or activity history. It's not their medical history. Key to this would be the person's ability. And we would just ask them like we have in the past on the written format. So we'll say this is a lower intermediate, and she was wearing a helmet, and she was not in a lesson. If they are in a lesson, click yes. We need the instructor's name here. And so let's say yes here, because I want to show you something in a minute. So say that Luke Torito was the instructor, and then the typical NSAA, NSP form questions that we need to ask. Did they use the trail or feature or activity before? Yes. She had rode the chair once. Did she ride it before? Yes. Did she ride chair one? The last lift ride ridden before the incident obviously was chair one. How many times had she ridden that chair today? Twice. And if it's 0, you can put a 0 there. And had she fallen before? Yes, she's fallen twice before. And then how many days at this area this season? If this is the first day, we put a 1. Obviously, if it's a lot of days, you can just kind of ask the patient to come up with a number of how many days they've been with us this season. It's nice to know if they skied other places this season. So maybe she's been to 2 other days. And then learn when is just kind of a general question, but we might just say that she learned when she was age 4 or something along those lines. Again, I would save this to grab every tab's data and as complete as possible. We see a lot of missing fields in this. So again, when you open up injury, this is more like our medical data, kind of our first aid data. So in this case, you'll see that it did come over from our dispatch because we put it in there. So it already has that it has a right knee sprain. And complaint now is where we would insert the patient's chief complaint. This is not our observation. This is essentially what the patient or somebody really close to the patient told us the complaint is. So you could say the patient states fell while unloading, lift, and twisted right knee, felt immediate pain. So whatever, I'll fix this. So whatever the patient says to us, even if it's doesn't match what we're seeing, is what we use for complaint. So this is subjective and it's right out of the patient's mouth. So that's really pretty much it on that piece that just talks about the injury and the cause of the injury. And now we'll roll down to the treatment tab. Now what we're looking for here is, all right, you've got a patient, the patient's got this injury. Tell us how the patient got off the hill. So I can't change the word station in the system, but to station means essentially to the first aid room or to the base area. So in the case of like we transport directly off the hill into an ambulance, that's still to station. But it basically is asking, how did you get the patient off the hill? So for the winter operations, ski patrol, typically we're going to use in toboggan, and summer we got other things that we might use, but we'll just say that it was toboggan. It's nice to know who drove the toboggan. So that's what that's for. We put the name of who drove the toboggan, and we'll say that the arrival time for them was 12:30 p.m. Very important and frequently missing value is what time the patient was brought off the hill, either to first aid or to a waiting ambulance or whatever we did with the patient. So pretty straightforward OEC stuff here. Sample. So allergies, she's allergic to, let's say she's allergic to penicillin, and she doesn't take any medications. If these are empty, we think that the question wasn't asked. So even if the patient doesn't take any medications, you need to indicate none or no. That means you asked the question and the answer was no. Last meal, if you want to put it in, it doesn't have to be crazy, just when the last time they ate. This is all part of sample history. She's got no medical history. She's got no pre-existing conditions. And then now we're down to our part of the report, which is examination and possible injury. And so under examination, you might say, well, what did we do? We did an exam. There's pain in the right knee. No deformity. And you can go on with your assessment. So, if it was a fracture, you might talk about distal CSM, or they can't feel their toes, or, if you have deformity, or if you have an open fracture, you note that. So anything that you find on your exam. And you also can notice, you also can document other pertinent negatives. So you could just say the patient wearing a helmet in use. For a head injury, you could make a note in here that talks about the condition of the helmet. Anything that is your assessment as a patroller would go inside this space. And then the treatment is pretty straightforward, but like in this case, we do a quick splint and we transport to the first aid room. So it can be pretty straightforward. If you take more treatment in the first aid room, if we apply ice, in the first aid room, ice applied, maybe switched out to a cardboard splint. and assisted into a car with the parents. So whatever the treatment was, it goes in this field. All right. So again, I would frequently save these just so that you don't lose any data. So it's good. All right, recommendation. This is our recommendation to the patient, and generally, you know, we're either going to say it's okay to resume, don't resume, or seek higher level care, like if we went in the ambulance. So in this case, we would say, hey, you twisted your knee, you probably shouldn't ski the rest of the day. So do not resume activities. From station means how they left first aid. So in this case, we're going to say that the patient left by private vehicle. And who's doing that? We can just say the parents or mom or something that describes who took the patient out. And we want to note that time that they left. So we'll say at 1 p.m. and the destination, if known, you know, in this case, maybe we're just saying home. But if it was like an ER, we would say the patient went to Bay State Franklin, or, you know, wherever they went. If they went by helicopter, maybe they went to Albany. So having the destination is really important, especially if we are sending medical equipment, and I'm trying to hunt that down later. So it's nice where they went. So if let's say it was a more serious thing and a helicopter came and we sent the patient with, you know, a scoop and a traction splint. It's just nice to know in the report that we need to hunt that down at the other facility and what was sent. So we'll go ahead and save that again, and we'll keep moving down the report. And as you get used to these, you'll get pretty fast. Vital signs, interesting. We don't have a good habit of taking vital signs in our patients, and I think that's something I'd really like us to work on. And it doesn't have to be extravagant, and it doesn't have to be a ton of sets of vital signs unless there's somebody kind of serious and we're watching. We got them in first aid. We're waiting on EMS. We're going to take a set of vital signs. But even as something as simple as getting a pulse ox on somebody and getting a heart rate and a saturation and checking their pulse is really important. And so this is how you would add that. So you'd add the vital sign. It's when you do that, it's going to grab the current time. And let's say, you know, we did take her blood pressure and it was 115/70, and her respiratory rate was 20, and her pulse was 100 because she's a scared kid, and the saturation is 99%. And her skin is warm and dry and pink, which is the normal condition of our skin, which is fine. Maybe you check the pupils, maybe you didn't. MS has mental status, so you know the AVPU scale, and you can just put the letter A there for alert. And then you can add any additional comments about vital signs here. So if you're unable to obtain a blood pressure, or, you know, whatever the situation was. And then you'll notice there's a save and close form here. This is pretty important. So now that set of vital signs are saved in the report, and you can certainly add more if you want to. Moving forward into injured statement. Again, a real key piece for risk management standpoint would be these questions. So did the patient refuse treatment? Nope. We picked her up. We put a quick splint on, took her off the hill, down to first aid, over to her parents. So we'll say no to refusal. Injured's description. We've had this question in all of our paper reports in the past, but to the best of your ability, try to recount or capture what the patient said. I was trying to get off the lift, whatever the patient says to you. The lift, when I fell and twisted my knee. So pretty simple on this one, but it could be more complicated for other cases. All right, so whatever they say to you, put in this space. If you ask the question, and you need to ask the question, how could you have prevented the incident, and they say anything, put it down. So, you know, if they said something like, learn how to unload better. Whatever the patient says to you about prevention, please capture it. It's very important. In this case, we would probably get the parent signature because it's a 10-year-old. That would be optimal, but this is a key thing. We need the injured person's signature here, and what they're signing is the statement of how it happened and how it could have been prevented. So add it and edit the signature, and the patient signs here. We had done, and now we have the signature in the report. Very important that we get their signature because it helps capture what they said to us into this report. Okay, moving on. I'm going to save that. It's going to save a lot. Moving on to conditions. We've got this set up for both winter and summer. And we have turned off the winter conditions for the summer season, so you won't see groomed and powder and icy and all that stuff right now. But those will be on for the winter. We just kind of want to make this list a little cleaner to work with. But I'll just put dry, even though it's a winter, that's a summer type condition for the trail. But weather, we can say, you know, what's going on with the weather? Well, it was snowing and the wind was it was windy. I didn't write those lists, by the way. And the visibility was good. And, you know, water condition is really for places that have water parks because the system is used for that. And the temperature was estimated or known to be at 25 degrees. But now witness statements, if we have witnesses that we want to record into this incident, we can do that here. Generally speaking, we are going to work with the accident investigation or incident investigation team to get the witness statements on a different piece of paper. But this is a good place where you can at least grab their name and get some information. Again, it launches this huge demographic field. But even if you just got their name, maybe their phone number, address, some way we can get a hold of a witness and put it in here, that would be great. All right, so again, I'll save. We're almost there, really close. Now, equipment, a field also that has been frequently skipped or ignored in the past, is incredibly important for both bike and ski patrols. We need to record the equipment, and essentially what we really need is we need to know whether they own it or whether they rented it from us. So in this case, we'll say that it was Alpine skis, and they were, I don't know what kind we have in the shop, but they're Rosignol's. Maybe you have the model in there, and the ownership is key because this is how we track and make sure that we track down that the rentals are involved, that they get inspected, and we know exactly what it was. So it's a Berkshire East rental. We can just say it's Berkshire East Rentals is where it came from. If there's an asset number on the pair of skis, just put that in here. Don't worry so much about the DIN and the adjustment and all that kind of stuff because the shop is going to do that. But essentially what this does is that it tracks for our ability to know that the rentals were involved. And then if we took the skis over to the shop, we could just say that we took them back to the shop and go ahead and save that. So I will save the whole report here. We're almost there. And lastly, responders. So you'll notice that Ed and I are associated with this call already. That's because dispatch put it in there for us. If you need to add more people, let's say there's somebody at first aid that is also involved. So we brought the patient down to first aid, and we will say that the next person involved, the type of responder they were, was on duty at the aid room. So like they're on base duty. And it was Forrest. So we'll say Forrest was down there helping us. And Forrest could actually go in and sign this call right now as well. It doesn't mean that Forrest is ultimately responsible for this call. And it's just that he's part of the call. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go back and say, well, Mark and Ed were involved on this case. So what was Mark's role? Well, Mark's role was the first on the scene. And here's my signature. And really, we only need the signature of the person who is ultimately responsible for this report, which in this case was me because I was first on scene. If Ed's around and we can grab his signature, we will do that. But we certainly could also say that Ed was second on scene, or Ed was the toboggan driver. And we'll just kind of save that. Once you do that, it's going to require that Ed sign it if I open up its role in there. So, All right, I'm going to save that. And you'll see now that it records that I was first on scene, that Ed was the toboggan driver. We've all signed the report. We got nice green thumbs over here on the right. And Forrest was the direct to aid room. I can run a check now if I go over to the check mark. And it's going to tell me, hey, you actually completed all of the validation checks, meaning all the fields that you're supposed to have required have been completed. If it wasn't the case, it would light up red and tell you the ones that need to be fixed. So this report is essentially ready to submit for review. So what I can do now is show you a little bit of what is in development down the road. So in the past, we would deliver, for instance, a pair of skis or a bike to the shop with a piece of paper and have the mechanics fill it out on a piece of paper, get it back to us. We have to scan it in and put it in, and it gets lost, and we don't always get the right calls associated. We now have built all of the shop level inspection reports into OneRisk, and those shops have direct access into OneRisk to put those incidents in. And similarly, right now we've only got the bike school incident report, but in the winter we'll have the ski school incident report written. So I'm not going to go through those. It'll be for another time. But feel free to recheck your report. You can check it from end to end as well. And when you're ready to submit the report, you will hit submit for review. That is how the system is built. It actually goes into a workflow where it goes into a queue for those of us that review reports to check it. So I'm going to hit submit for review. Oops, sorry. And save the report. And I want to show you what it looks like on my end. Here's that report now. And its status is no longer new incident. Its status is pending review. Pending review would then go in and get approved or get sent back to you if there's some things that need to be fixed. So on my end, I would get into this report and got two options here. I can either review complete, which is, hey, this is a good report. It's good to go. We're going to mark it as complete. Or reverse workflow, which means I'm going to kick the report back into the system as a new incident and ask you to make some repairs. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this report as a test case. Oh, before I do that, let me just show you what the data looks like. The detail report. So you can see that these reports can be printed out, PDF'd. Sometimes I get requests from patients for their insurance, but it's got all of our information there as well. But in this case, I'm going to just delete this report as a test case and wipe it from the system so it doesn't impact our reporting. All right, so that is the basics of how to complete an incident report. Again, everything that you can do to make sure that all the applicable fields are completed to the best of your ability, and don't skip things over like times and some of that data. That would be optimal. So that's the primer for incident reporting. There are more training videos out there from OneRisk if you need more help, but that's our 101 for patrol. And with that, I am going to sign off, and thanks for joining me.